Hi, I'm Deb Kimmet, and I want to make a few comments with regards to the position paper that several massage therapy organizations released recently and give my 2 cents on it. When I first read it, I was very interested. I was happy about it. There were some good things on there, but overall, I felt they missed the mark a little bit. But then when I started reading it more carefully, I started having more and more issues with what I was reading there. But first, before I get into that specifically, I want to tell you a little bit about myself because I want you to know that I'm not against any of these organizations whatsoever. In fact, I'm a member or have belonged to or have been involved with many of these organizations. So for example, I've been a massage therapist for over 30 years, and I've written, co-written rules, regulations, my state statute, and lobbied for and against various pieces of legislation for a very, very long time. I've also chaired my state board. I've also been a delegate to the FSMTB. I'm a member of the ABMP. I'm a member of the Alliance in good standing, and meaning that I'm a continuing education provider. And as such, I also became certified as a massage and bodywork educator as soon as that became available. I was part of the beta test. I'm also certified through the NCB TMB. I was an early adopter there too. I helped to bring the exam to my state. So I'm board certified. I'm also and maintain my certification. So I'm not a member of AMTA. They did not sign on to this, and the NCB did not sign on to this. And I think that it is interesting that they did not sign on. So I've been involved with all of these various groups. I've supported all these various groups, but I feel like this position paper misses the mark. And I want to talk about that for a minute. The reason why I believe that is because of the language involved and because of where they're going with this in terms of talking about the various provisions that needs to go into this. And first of all, there's an overarching narrative that's happening with regulation, with massage therapy, and establishment licensing, and some of the actions that some boards are doing, et cetera, that I think are missing the mark. There is this move and push to try to regulate illicit businesses out of massage. And that's the narrative. But who's driving that narrative? That's anti-trafficking groups. And in fact, one of them wrote a report that was released in January of 2018. And I critiqued that report. I tore it apart because I believe in science. And one of the things that I do is I believe in research as well. So I went through and analyzed that paper very carefully. And it didn't hold up. None of what they talked about was substantiated or held up when you look at the evidence with regards to what they put into that paper. And lo and behold, within a year, maybe two, by 2021 for certain, the last time I looked, it had been pulled from their website. But they're still advocating for this, for these types of regulations and rules. And so they're the ones driving the narrative, not massage therapists. And as part of that, what happens is that they coined the term illicit massage business. And so I know that this group is buying into that narrative because they're using that terminology as well, illicit massage business or illicit massage school. And there's issues with that. Part of what we need to understand is that names matter. What we call something matters because it creates a perception. There's been a lot of studies done on this. For example, if there are 3 people, John, Juan, and Joni, and they're all applying for the same job, based on people's preconceived notions, their implicit biases, only one of those people is going to get the call for an interview, depending upon what the job is for, what it's about, and who's doing the hiring. Everyone has implicit biases. Everyone has unconscious biases. And so when you plop the 2 words illicit and massage right next to each other, then that creates a perception or a bias that there's something wrong with massage. See, we don't describe any crimes or any other criminals using the business that they're pretending to be. So for example, if a theft ring dresses up like plumbers, we don't call them an illicit plumbing ring. We don't call them an illicit plumbing business. We call them a theft ring disguised as plumbers. We name the crime. And so when you put those two words, illicit massage, right next to each other, that creates perception that massage is tainted. And that creates a narrative that massage itself needs to be regulated, rather than looking at the criminals are the ones that are causing the problems. The criminals are the ones that are the problem, not the massage therapists. And instead, what ends up happening is we end up doing a bunch of regulation going through massage therapists trying to get to the criminals. And it fits the narrative of what these anti-trafficking groups want to do. What I'm trying to say here is that if you don't understand that that's the basic narrative of what's going on, you're not going to understand what we need to do as a profession in order to fix the problem. So the next thing I want to talk about is that by making these changes, by coming up with this position paper, we're not driving the narrative. That narrative is being driven by others, anti-trafficking groups. They've got this blueprint of how they want regulation to go, and they're going to fulfill that blueprint or that template of how they want regulation to go, come hell or high water. And if we buy into that template, then we're only going to hurt ourselves. Now, think about it this way. If your goal is to regulate all massage businesses so that way it becomes easier to help the victims by not having police involved, by regulating everyone in the profession that way, so that way it doesn't target the victims or single them out, and the code enforcers can act like social workers and convince victims to leave the situation, then that is what the narrative is. That's what they want. That's why they want to blame the entire massage profession for this. And believe me, I am anti-human trafficking. I've worked in the domestic violence field for many years, helping victims of survivors, actually, of domestic violence and sexual assault and all those kinds of things. So believe me, I am really empathetic to the issue. But the trick is that what these groups want to do is set up a narrative so that they can get what they want to be able to regulate us. And basically what they're doing is regulating us as the criminals. They're regulating us as what the paper calls adult entertainment, which, just like illicit massage business, is not quite correct terminology, because to have a victim of human trafficking being entertainment for someone else really gets under the skin of anti-trafficking groups. So I really recommend language like sexually oriented business. What ends up happening is that by setting this narrative up, the anti-trafficking groups get to decide how the regulation goes, not the massage profession. So what's imperative for our profession to do is to take control of the narrative, use the language that serves us as a profession. And I get it, everyone wants to stop trafficking. Everyone wants to help. And in fact, there's been books written on the helper syndrome, where we start giving up of ourselves too much to be able to help. And what's important for us to do is to find where the boundaries sit of what is appropriate for us as a profession to do versus what fits the narrative of what these anti-trafficking groups want. And in fact, what we end up having happen is having this laundry list of saying, well, we don't want this, we don't want that, we don't want this, or we should be doing this, or we should be doing that, is not helpful, because the anti-trafficking groups have the ear of law enforcement. They have the ear of city and state governments, and everybody wants to help the trafficking victims. Oh, and then they couch it also of saying, well, we're not targeting you, we're trying to get them. But the problem is they're going through us to get to them. And that's not what we need to be doing. Now, there are some things that we need to do as massage therapists. We can control the entry points, like, for example, some of the initiatives around schools, some of the initiatives around education, some of the initiatives around teacher education, some of the initiatives around prosecuting unlicensed practice. Those are entry points that are perfectly fine to regulate. But when it comes down to regulating the businesses of massage therapists, then that's not what I'm talking about. And that's where I object. And in fact, one of the things it says here that's really interesting is that they don't want to, they want to remove, let's see, eliminating laws currently on the books that treat massage therapists as presumed sex workers, adult entertainment. And again, a better term instead of adult entertainment would be sexually oriented business. Okay. So regulating massage therapists is a sexually oriented business. And then later on, they talk about, looking at exploring the merits of regulatory oversight of massage establishments. Those two things, the way it is right now, cannot coexist because 99% of the laws that regulate establishments regulate us as sexually oriented businesses. They're tied together. We can't go there. Taking control of the narrative. And one of the ways that we do that is developing a system-wide response that's very measured and that really takes into consideration what our part is in the issue. Yes, they're hijacking our profession, but does that make us responsible for fixing the problem and paying for fixing the problem, which is what's currently happening? What I'm also proposing is that it's not simply about saying, hey, we want to do this. No, part of it is coming up with a response whereby we call out these anti-trafficking groups by saying, hey, we're the experts on our profession and you're not. And we're also dealing with sex buyers all the time. Take Respect Massage. That program was set up to deal with that. So we're dealing with the issue every day, day in, day out. These anti-trafficking groups know nothing about our profession. And when they came up with their template and their blueprint for dealing with the problem, they never consulted us. The other thing is rather than being reactive, let's be proactive and put together model language, model legislation that really addresses this issue. There are ways and legislation that can be done that does not harm our profession, put more burdens on us, and quite frankly, I believe it's sexist because the vast majority of us are women, and when you have a mayor of a city saying, can't you gals just take one for the team? When you hear that kind of language, there's sexism involved. And so because our profession has been so fragmented with regards to a response, all we've been able to do individually is run around trying to make a difference. And we can't. We need a coordinated response. What's interesting to me about this whole thing, in looking at it in hindsight, is I've been doing some research and putting together some papers. And the 1894 massage scandals that the British Medical Journal wrote about and published, it's being turned over again here because way back then, the social mores were different. In fact, it was disgusting to work on someone of the opposite sex back then. And the nurses felt at that time that the masseuses, because that's the language that's used in England, and also at that time, felt that their only recourse really was to regulate themselves by going in underneath the doctors and setting up a particular association in a particular way with particular guidelines and particular rules. But the difference between back then and today is that we have a little bit more power. We're regulated state by state. We have laws in place that help regulate us, and we can do some things with that. But we're smart. We can figure it out. What's important to figure out is how to take the narrative away from the anti-trafficking groups and put it where it belongs, which is with the massage therapy profession in terms of any regulation that is on the massage therapy profession. We can do it. Let's not let history repeat itself by us deciding to put a whole bunch of regulation on ourselves and hope that it'll work, because it won't. We know this from years and years of experience, and I've got the research proving it. We just have to work together to do it. So far, our organizations aren't really good at that, but let's figure out a way to get it done. Maybe we need a new organization that'll do that, a PAC, a political action committee, whose sole job is to deal with these issues and to proactively lobby, proactively go out there and educate people, proactively come up with alternatives to what's being proposed right now. Because until we can do that, basically what'll happen is that the profession will not progress as long as we're being viewed through the lens of human trafficking. That's the current perception, and it's up to us to change it. And as long as these laws exist with regards to establishment licensing, calling us illicit massage businesses, that's how we're going to be viewed. We're going to be viewed as a problem that needs to be regulated. And that's simply not right. We can do better as a profession. And that's why I'm disappointed in this paperwork. Yes, there's some great things about it, but there are also some very disappointing aspects to it, because it's clear we don't understand the problem.